And welcome into this week's edition of The Locker Room. I'm your host, Cade Crenshaw, joined this week by Will Kronsberg as we're talking a little October baseball as both the National League and American League Championship Series are well underway, and we've had a lot of action so far. Let's start in the National League. Let's talk Atlanta Braves and Los Angeles Dodgers. What do you take about the series so far through just a few games?
Absolutely. I think it's sort of a surprise. We're seeing the Braves up 2-0 the past two nights. The Dodgers, obviously, a little bit shorthanded. Clayton Kershaw out with a back injury, was supposed to start Game 2. Instead, they went with a young pitcher, Tony Gonsolin.
Now, we look back at Game 2 last night where really it was more lopsided than maybe the score says. The Braves got the win 8-7 to take the 2-0 series lead in the best of 7. But you look close to the ninth inning, well, the Dodgers kind of made that 4-run comeback, and they had the tying run in Cody Bellinger left from 90 feet home over at third base. So the Dodgers had a chance there late, but the Braves were able to pull away the win. Now, we look at this series. It continues tonight for Game 3 at 6:05 p.m. on Fox Sports 1. Look at this series tonight in Game 3. What's the biggest key for either team?
I think the biggest key for either team is bullpen health. We've seen the starters in both games be okay. Gonsolin was a little bit off his game last night, but as you mentioned, the Braves gave up most of the runs in the later innings after their starter had already left the game.
You know, I feel like for so many years now, we've talked about the Braves have the offensive talent to be a World Series contender. Obviously, Freddie Freeman leads that charge as he's in and out of the MVP conversation every single year. But the weakness for the Atlanta Braves has always been their pitching staff. But this year, that's probably one of their strengths.
The Braves have been they've been stronger than I thought they would be. They had early pitching injuries, and they relied on guys like Ian Anderson and Max Fried, who have been better than I really would have ever guessed they would be.
You know, we look back, so far, Max Fried and Ian Anderson had great starts for the Atlanta Braves tonight. Kyle Wright on the mound. This is kind of that soft spot for the Braves lineup. Could the Dodgers potentially take advantage of Wright being on the mound?
I think Kyle Wright hasn't quite lived up to his potential, what the Braves thought they would get a couple years back. And the Dodgers have such a strong lineup that even down 2-0, you can never count them out, with guys like Bellinger, Betts, Justin Turner, Corey Seager populating the lineup card.
Prior to last night's ninth inning comeback for the Dodgers, 8 Braves pitchers absolutely dominated Los Angeles. They only allowed 10 hits and 8 walks through 17 innings and striking out 20 Dodgers. What's the biggest key for the Dodgers to overcome these offensive woes they've had through 2 games outside of last night's ninth inning?
Well, I think you said it. They have to play like they did in the ninth inning. They have to get guys like Bellinger on base, and they have to hit with a little bit more power.
Of course, Game 3 continues tonight at 6:05 on Fox Sports 1. Now, let's kind of move the conversation over to the defensive side of things. Like you talked about the pitching staff a little bit for the Dodgers and how Clayton Kershaw, well, he's not fully healthy. He could be able to go in Game 5, depending on that back spasm injury. How do you think the Dodgers will be able to respond tonight with Julio Urias on the mound?
I think Julio's a guy who started his career strong. He was in the rotation, kind of faded back to the bullpen, and with more injuries in the Dodgers pitching staff, like Clayton Kershaw, in and out of the rotation this season, he's a guy they really had to rely on, and I think he is going to be having to rely on the 9 behind him.
It's going to be an exciting series over the National League with the trip to the World Series on the line. For the Atlanta Braves, could be their first World Series appearance since 1999. Let's go over to the American League where the series is kind of going the same direction. The Tampa Bay Rays lead the Houston Astros 3-0 in the best of 7 series for the American League pennant. Game 4 continues tonight, coming up at 8:40 on TBS. And what a series this has been. You look at the metrics, and I think the Astros, they've had bigger hits, they've hit more powerful balls, but it hasn't equaled out to runs, and that's essentially what it comes down to. What metric would you rather have? More powerful hits or more runs on the board? And I think the Tampa Bay Rays, they chose theirs, and we can see where they're at, up 3-0. Looking at this series, the Astros, they're facing elimination tonight. Maybe the season comes to a close. Zach Greinke on the mound isn't enough to save their season.
I think Zach Greinke has been the Astros ace since Justin Verlander went down, but the problem there is that they have to face Tyler Glasnow tonight. Tyler Glasnow for the Rays has been excellent this season. You look at him last week against the Yankees, very strong performance, and I just don't know if the Astros have it. too many defensive woes for them this series.
Now, we talk about the Astros, and a lot of people, gave them grief about the cheating scandal and say the talent wasn't there, it didn't equal out to the success they had, and resulting in a World Series championship. But look at this, how they're playing right now. Well, was the grief worth it a little bit? They're down 3 games here in the American League Conference Championship Series. How are you viewing this now? Is this Astros team for real, or was the grief they got actually validated?
Well, I thought at first that the grief was very valid. They brought in a new interim manager, Dusty Baker, somebody who's very experienced, but you saw a lot of their top players, like Jose Altuve, struggle a lot at the plate at the beginning of the season. He's been hitting for a little bit more power in the playoffs, but as I mentioned, lots of defensive woes. I think he's already committed 3 fielding errors in just these past 3 games.
We talk about the Tampa Bay Rays, and really, for the last few years, while the Astros won a World Series, the Tampa Bay Rays, not so much. Been one of those bottom-of-the-barrel teams in Major League Baseball. Now, they're leading the American League. What can you take about this Tampa Bay Rays team? How shocking is this that they're 1 win away from their first World Series appearance in 12 years?
Well, I think going back to 2008, since that World Series appearance, the Rays haven't been really a contender in the AL East, with teams like the Red Sox, the Yankees going to World Series in that time span. And the Rays have one of the lowest payrolls in all of baseball. They and the Athletics are consistently at the bottom, and yet you saw both teams win their divisions, make the playoffs this year.
The Rays 1 win away from potentially securing their second World Series appearance in organization history. Now, let's look at both of these series. All right, let's start in the American League first. Game 4 tonight. Do the Rays wrap it up, or do the Astros stay alive?
It's hard for me to see the Rays not being able to win. They've looked more dominant in these past 3 games than the Braves have on the other side. The Astros always have a chance with their strong lineup, with guys like Bregman, Correa, and Altuve, and Zach Greinke on the hill. But I like the Rays to wrap this one up tonight.
Now, your precursor to the Astros and Rays will be the Braves and the Dodgers coming up tonight at 6:05 on Fox Sports 1. Now, Will, you kind of look at this matchup. We still are 2 games away from possibly a series clincher. But like we were talking earlier, the Dodgers, they're a very talented team, right? Won 40-plus games in this shortened regular season. Do they have enough talent to overcome what is now the weak spot in the Braves pitching rotation?
Well, unlike with the Rays and Astros, I don't see this one wrapping up in 4. I think maybe outside of the Yankees, the Dodgers have the strongest lineup, 1-9, and it's hard to win against that 4 nights in a row.
So let's look at the series as a whole now. You took Tampa Bay in 4. How do you see this National League Series playing out?
I think the Dodgers have sort of put themselves in a very precarious position. It's hard to say that they can come back and win this in 6 or 7. I like the Braves probably to wrap this up in about 6.
It's going to be an exciting series for fans across the board. For Tampa Bay Rays fans, they may be going to their second World Series ever for the first time, second for the first time in 12 years. And for Atlanta Braves fans, well, they're on the fringe of going for the first World Series since 1999, not to mention their last win being in '95. Will, thanks for joining us this week. It's an exciting time to talk about October baseball, and we thank you all for joining in on the conversation. For Will Kronsberg, I'm Cade Crenshaw. You've been watching The Locker Room, and we'll see you next week.